Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we have a little bit of a weekly report and a week preview. I call it the weekly report. So if you are a Bulls fan, you want 7 Bulls videos a week at the very minimum, hit that like button, hit that sub button. Let's aim for 100 likes on today's video. That would be absolutely unbelievable. I actually wouldn't know what I would do if this got to 100 likes. A Bulls video with 100 likes? Jeez. Beautiful night here in Chicago. It is finally fall. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. But yeah, I'm just going to go through the last couple of games and this week in general. I want to start with some initial thoughts. The first off is Patrick Williams' injury. This one was devastating. I mean, it's devastating, but I think it's more devastating not so much in the impact standpoint, but more so from the... It sucks because he's the 4th pick in the draft last year. He had a solid rookie year. He guarded a lot of really talented basketball players, and I thought he was poised for a breakout year. At the very least, his second half for his sophomore season, it was going to be great. And Patrick Williams, he was shooting the ball well this season from the field. He was shooting the ball well from deep, playing good defense. Yeah, I have my issues with Patrick Williams because it's like, all right, Patrick, if you're 3 for 4, why'd you only take 4 shots? You're shooting 75%. Let's start shooting that basketball a little bit more. But I thought Patrick Williams heading into the season was kind of going to be that guy that was under the radar, and if he broke out, the Bulls were poised for a breakout season. Fortunately, the Bulls are 5-1. They're 1-0 without Patrick Williams, and in the last game against the Utah Jazz, they demonstrated, hey, it's next man up. When your name is called, you better be ready. And Tony Bradley and Derrick Jones Jr., those two guys specifically, they really, really impressed me in that last game against the Utah Jazz. Both of those two players, Tony and Derrick, they haven't been playing much this entire season. I don't know if it was rotations. I don't know, I honestly thought Derrick Jones Jr. was still injured because it's like, why isn't he playing basketball games? So this injury has opened the doors to guys who are also just as hungry, just as talented. They're ready to step up. So this last game, we saw a great defensive performance from Derrick Jones Jr., 4 points, 3 rebounds, 18 minutes, but he threw in 1 steal and 3 blocks. Tony Bradley, in only 13 minutes, grabbed 4 rebounds, 2 points, and 2 blocks. So this bench unit, Alex Caruso can't do anything. We can't just rely on Kobe White to create this spark off the bench, which I believe he will, but we can't just assume Kobe White's going to come into this bench unit, put up at least 12 points per game. 15 would be, oh my goodness, if Kobe White's dropping 15 off the bench every single night, oh, watch out for these Bulls. But the reason I'm bringing up both of these two cats is because we have an issue. The Bulls need another power forward. I don't care how good Tony Bradley's playing. I don't care how good Derrick Jones Jr. is playing. The more the merrier. And with only one power forward really on the roster, do we even have a goddamn power? I guess Elijah Johnson's technically a power forward. He got a DNP last night against the Utah Jazz. But it's like, we need more. And I'm eyeing 2 guys, Derek Favors and Marvin Bagley Jr., and I would prefer Derek Favors, and let me tell you why. Marvin Bagley has been rumored since the start of the season, even heading into the offseason, that the Sacramento Kings, they made it clear before opening night, he is not going to be in the rotation. He will not be playing basketball games for them in the near future. I don't know what's going on in Sacramento. I don't know if they're trying to trade him or if they're trying to develop him still. Who really knows? Sacramento has a pretty actually low-key team, so I hope it works out. I'm going to be honest. I'm a Duke fan. He was the 2nd pick in the 2018 NBA draft for a reason, and my hopes are still high for him. I believe he's a talented basketball player who just needs a change of scenery. Here's the issue with trading for Marvin Bagley, because it all sounds like peaches and lollipops, but here's the bottom line. The Bulls have one really tradable contract that they're really going to be willing to get rid of. It's Derrick Jones Jr. And the way Derrick Jones Jr. played last night against the Utah Jazz, I'm in no rush to trade away Derrick Jones Jr. An unproven player in Marvin Bagley for a proven role player in Derrick Jones Jr., who is extremely athletic and can play defense. Now, I'm chilling on that. So you combine that with the fact that the Chicago Bulls probably aren't in a position to be searching for trades right now. The reason is because Adam Silver came out this last week and said, we don't know yet. We don't know about the Bulls' tampering situation. They are not sure. We don't know if we're going to be giving up a first-round pick. We don't know if we're going to be giving up a second-round pick. So until the tampering investigation gets resolved, I expect the Chicago Bulls to make absolutely zero moves, because why trade away Derrick Jones Jr. and a first-round draft pick for Marvin Bagley if you're going to be losing a first-round draft pick? You might as well just try and make it work with Derrick Jones Jr., because if you're basing it off the best team in the NBA, the Utah Jazz last night, he did just a fine job. So that's my situation on Marvin Bagley. Here's my situation on Derek Favors. I think Derek's a lot more gettable because he wasn't the second pick in the 2018 draft. He's on a rebuilding team, much like the Sacramento Kings. I feel like Sacramento's a little bit more competitive than them. Like, Sacramento might actually sneak into the play-in tournament. They have a very talented group of guys. De'Aaron Fox, Rashawn Holmes, Tyrese Halliburton, just to name a few. Harrison Barnes is averaging like 25 and 10 right now. So you look at Derek Favors on the Oklahoma City Thunder, they're trying to acquire assets. I mean, that's really the bottom line with Oklahoma, is they're trying to acquire draft picks, and there is little to no room for a player like Derek Favors on that roster. And OKC, I'm sure, would agree with you. They took on all of these older veteran players on relatively bigger salaries just because they want those draft picks. They're willing to take that hit because they're rebuilding for the next 10 years. So Derek Favors to me is a little bit more gettable because we'd be able to give up like a second-round pick for him. And OKC, not yet in the season, not 7-8 games into the season, but I'm talking a little bit more towards the trade deadline, at least to the month of February. That's when you're looking at a very realistic opportunity to trade for a guy like Derek Favors. And here's the best part. You've already played 30 games at the very minimum with your starting lineup and with your bench lineup. So we'd be able to see 30 games from now, like, does Chicago actually need a power forward, or is this just stuff we're speculating? Because heading into this season, defense was going to be a concern for the Bulls, but it's been the absolute flip. It's literally been the complete opposite. It's been the defense is keeping them in games. The defense is helping them win games because the offense hasn't really hit its stride quite yet. It hit its stride in the preseason, but a couple of guys like Zach LaVine, I mean, he's literally got a cast on his left hand, Alonzo Ball, Nikola Vucevic, these guys just aren't really shooting the ball too well right now. So these are things that, like, I know Patrick Williams, I know that really sucks, man, but Bulls are 5-1, number one in the Eastern Conference. Like, I am willing to wait at least a month, because this month of November, which we'll go into here in just a couple of minutes, it's going to be challenging. It is definitely going to be challenging. And Zach LaVine, if we're being honest, his injury kind of scares me, but thankfully we have guys like DeMar DeRozan, Nikola Vucevic, and Lonzo Ball to help pick up the pace with them. Javonte Green, I actually love Javonte Green. He got 22 minutes in his first start for the Bulls the other night against the Jazz, 5 points, 2 rebounds, 2 of 2 from the field. He only played 22 minutes, so he wasn't able to really kind of get going, but I would imagine Javonte Green going forward is going to be a vital piece for this Bulls. So let's briefly recap this last week, because I thought it was a very impressive week. You got to win in Toronto by 3 points. The Bulls went 2-1 this week. I covered the Raptors, and my prediction for this season is the Raptors get the 5 seed. I've got the Nets as the 4 seed and the Bulls as the 3 seed. I have the Raptors advancing to the second round of the playoffs, beating the Brooklyn Nets in an upset. Although I don't know if it'll really be an upset, because Brooklyn, although they got a nice win against the Pistons tonight, I don't really know what to make of them without Kyrie Irving. I'm just under the assumption that Kyrie isn't playing for the Nets this season and that they're just kind of effed, because until something happens, I mean, this is the reality of it. So the Raptors on the road in Scotiabank, which I believe is number 4 in attendance so far, you can't undermine this. Toronto's on a 3-game winning streak right now. It was a 3-possession game. Bulls led for the whole game, essentially, and they dominated. Maybe not dominated, but they controlled at least 3 quarters. And they controlled at least 2 quarters. Heading into the fourth quarter, they had a lead, and then Toronto went on a run. I believe they scored 17 straight points. You move on to the New York Knicks, and you got a great Tom Thibodeau squad. Like, don't sleep on this Knicks team. There's a reason that they made a name for themselves, not only last season, but in the playoffs. I agree Julius Randle being your number one option might pose its own problems unless you have guys like RJ Barrett really step up to the opportunity at play here. But New York, defensively, they're phenomenal. And you saw it. I mean, it was 103 to 104, the Bulls. I don't think the Knicks scored in the last 3 minutes. The Bulls ended the game phenomenally. It was the best loss and only loss they've had on the whole season. And if you look at their season as a whole, they have one loss to a team who also has one loss, and that loss was by 1 point. I mean, it was a 1 point loss. It was devastating. I mean, I wanted DeMar DeRozan to get something a little bit better than that. I wanted Vucevic to not be on the 3-point line when you're up or when you're down by 1 point with a handful of seconds left. Why is Nikola Vucevic on that 3-point line? I have zero idea. But it doesn't matter. It was what, the fourth game of the season, fourth game of the season, I want to say. Yeah, fourth game of the season. So it's okay. It is okay. Fifth game of the season. I apologize. And then last night, I made my game recap video last night and this morning. So I don't want to talk too in depth about this, but you beat the 4-0 Jazz at home. I mean, the Bulls are demonstrating, hey, we're here to stay this year. This isn't like previous years. We are here to stay. We are legit. We are competitive. We look like we have been playing basketball together for at least a season. It's clicking. So let's take a look at this next week because it's not the end of the world. I know, like, we're all hyping up this month of November to be, oh my goodness. But here's the deal. If the Chicago Bulls were the same team they had last year, even if the Bulls even if it was like Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic and even like a healthy Bulls squad, the month of November, I don't think it's as bad as people are making it out to be. And we actually got it started against the New York Knicks. And then they got that nice bounce back win against the Chicago Bulls, against the Utah Jazz. So they get the week started tomorrow night at Boston. Boston sucks right now. I will be very blunt with you. Boston is a very bad, maybe not bad. They're a very dysfunctional basketball team right now. They're coming off back-to-back losses against the Washington Wizards, which isn't anything really to be happy about. They got obliterated by Scotty Barnes and the Toronto Raptors, and they got the season started off to a loss with the Knicks. They have a good win on the road in overtime against the Hornets, but that win on the road against the Houston Rockets, come on. I cover the Houston Rockets, let's be real. That team's winning 25 games max this season. You should win that basketball game, and they didn't. So, they did, but we can look at Scotty Barnes. Scotty Barnes put up, 23 and 10 against the Boston Celtics, and they won by like 20 plus. So Boston's dysfunctional right now. So I think that game is going to be a win, even though we are going to be in Boston. Now, Philadelphia, they're going to be without Ben Simmons. Now, they have gotten off to a good start to the season, 4-2. However, let's take a look at those 4 wins, shall we? Because those 2 losses are against pretty solid teams, the Brooklyn Nets and the New York Knicks. But who are those wins against? It's against the Pelicans. It's against the Thunder. It's against the Pistons. And it's against the Hawks. The Hawks are the best team out of the 4 teams I just mentioned with a record of 3-3, 9 in the East. So Philadelphia, yeah, they're a very talented team. They're well coached. They're good defensively, and they have a ton of options. But they're without their second best player. No matter how you want to put it, if your team's missing your 3-time All-Star point guard, come on. So that's the 2 games the Bulls play this next week after Boston. They're in Philadelphia on Wednesday, and then they're back at home on Saturday. Like I said, I think that they'll win Monday's game against Boston. I'm sure it'll be a little bit relatively close because Boston, I'm saying they're dysfunctional. I'm not saying they're bad. they have good players. I understand Dennis Schroeder is a walking meme. He's a good basketball player. Come on, man. The Celtics will figure it out at some point in the season. Now, what does that really entail? Probably like the 7th or 6th seed at best, but it's a different conversation for a different day. They need to trade Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum. The only issue is both of those two guys are studs, but they don't fit. So I think we get the win on Monday in Boston, and I think we get the win on Saturday home against Philadelphia. You're back home. You've had, 3 days of rest, 4 days of rest. So I think that they're going to be prepared for that, and then you've also, you're playing the same team back-to-back nights. So, I mean, if this were 2K, they would split it 100%. Wednesday's game in Philadelphia is going to be interesting. Road games, now that we're, quote-unquote back to normal, road games are interesting because I think what a lot of people forgot last year in the bubble, the home field advantage is a really big frickin' deal. It's a really big frickin' deal. And no matter how bad Philadelphia is, or without Ben Simmons, I should say, because they're not a bad team, I think they'll be able to find a way on Wednesday to take care of the Chicago Bulls. Saturday, I think the Bulls are going to make adjustments and absolutely dominate the Sixers, maybe not in the score, but I do think it'll be maybe at least an 8-point game on Saturday. But I do think Philadelphia wins in a close one. I think it'll be a very similar game to the loss at the Knicks. I think it'll be one possession, 4 or 5 points max. I think the Bulls will have an opportunity late in the game, and I think that just, someone probably isn't going to hit their shot, and it's all good. The Bulls, at the end of this week, if my predictions stand true, they would be 7-2. And then you get ready for a week against the Brooklyn Nets, the Dallas Mavericks, and the Golden State Warriors, and the Los Angeles Clippers. So I think what I'm trying to get at here is I think if you take this road trip, or not even road trip, if you take this West Coast swing, although none of the games this week are against the West Coast team, so I guess maybe the West Coast swing hasn't officially started because they do play the Mavericks, the Warriors, Clippers, Lakers, Trailblazers, and the Nuggets in 5 straight games. But we have this quote-unquote dreaded November schedule. I think the schedule would be dreaded for the old Bulls. And I think a lot of us Bulls fan, I know all of us Bulls fan, let me reiterate that statement, we're not used to winning. We haven't had a winning team since 2017. That was 4 years ago, coming on 5 years. And even that team wasn't that impressive. You had a Rajon Rondo, you had a washed-up Dwayne Wade, you had Jimmy Butler. They did as much as they could, and they actually almost upset the Boston Celtics, 8-1 seed. But you know what I'm saying? It was a washed Dwayne Wade. He's very old. He probably should have never left Miami, if we're being honest here. But, in fact, I wonder if you regret. Yeah, you can't regret playing for the Chicago Bulls, but you get where I'm coming from. I don't think that this month is as scary because we actually have a coherent team. We're 5-1. I guess that's 4th in the Eastern Conference, but I'm going to put them as tied for first. I'm going to go with football rules here. Tied for first. It's just not as bad. And especially you look at this week, you got Boston and then you got Philly twice. I don't think Philly's as dominant without Ben Simmons. If Philly had Ben Simmons, we'd have 2 phenomenal games. I still think they'll be very good games, but I think we can all agree if they had Ben Simmons, they would be probably unbelievable games to watch because you have a real duel between Eastern Conference teams at essentially full strength. I know Chicago's obviously without Patrick and without Kobe White, but I think our big 4 or at least big 3, I would love to see that against a full strength Philadelphia 76ers. So I think the Bulls go 2-1 once again. And that's a great spot to be in, 7-2. And then you're getting this quote unquote difficult week. Maybe we shouldn't count Toronto. I want to count Toronto, so I would say we'd be 6-2 after this quote-unquote difficult stretch. But I guess a lot of people are viewing the difficult stretch as just the month of November in general. So maybe it technically wouldn't start, but still, nonetheless, a 2-1 start to the quote-unquote dreaded month of November. I think we could all agree. We would all be very happy with that. It comes down to winning the games you got to win. And I think we can look at that at Boston. Chicago's 5-1. Boston's 2-4. Boston's a little dysfunctional right now. Chicago, yeah, their offense is slightly dysfunctional, but their defense has been playing phenomenal. And the Bulls are bound for an offensive breakout game. They had one, I guess, against the New Orleans Pelicans, 128 points. But outside of that, the next highest was Toronto, 111, Jazz, 107, and then the Knicks, 104. So I think that they'll like truly have a breakout game Monday against the Boston Celtics. I bet they'll win this game by like 20 plus, and everyone's going to just continue the hype. Like, don't sleep on the Bulls. And you know what they shouldn't be doing? They shouldn't be sleeping on the Bulls. So it's very granted media. It's very earned media. So that's really it for today. Let me know if you like these weekly close-ups or closeouts, whatever you want to call it, like the weekly recap and kind of next week preview. Let me know if you like these guys. If you're still watching right now, I love you so much. Like, for real, we're 20 minutes into this, so I love you so much. Let me know if you're still watching this, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.